Yamutatira Vanachari Jaya Raja Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavala Yashodanandana Rajajana Randana Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Raja Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavala Girivardhari Yashodanandana Vrajajana Randana Yamunatira Vanachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Together. Narayanam Naspritya Naram Jaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Dhiramet Nasta Preshamadrishu Nikam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttamasloke Bhagavati Bhagavati. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is very means of conquest, one offers a special basis under the personality of God, unto Narayana the language, Siromani, unto Rasika, and the Srimad Rasika, by regular attendance on classes of Bhagavatam, by rigorous service to pure devotees. All that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, with praise and transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable practice. So this morning we're continuing with the ongoing saga of the marriage of Kardama Muni and Devahuti, but we're going to take a little bit of a a detour here and talk about Swayambhuvamanu, father of Devahuti, and the environment that he created within his home. And today's subject that I was given is creating spiritual atmosphere. So I want to invite you to help me unpack this verse and purport. It's quite nice and very practical, actually. So 22 through 39, and we can just start out as usual and take turns reading. After having unmistakably known the decision of the queen, as well as that of Devahuti, the emperor most gladly gave his daughter to the sage, whose host of virtues was equaled by hers.
Empress Shatarupa lovingly gave us valuable presents suitable for the occasion, such as jewelry, clothes, and household articles, in dowry to the bride and bridegroom.
Thus, relieved of his responsibility by handing over his daughter to a suitable man, Swayambhuvamanu, his mind agitated by feelings of separation, embraced his affectionate daughter with both his arms.
The emperor was unable to bear the separation of his daughter. Therefore, tears poured from his eyes again and again, drenching his daughter's head as he cried, "My dear mother, my dear daughter."
After asking and obtaining the great sage's permission to leave, the monarch mounted his chariot with his wife and started for his capital, followed by his retinue. Along the way, he saw the prosperity of the tranquil seers' beautiful hermitages. On both the charming banks of the Sarasvati, the river so agreeable to saintly persons.
Overjoyed to know of his arrival, his subjects came forth from Brahmavarta to greet their returning lord with songs, prayers, and musical instruments.
Go ahead, Ari.
The city of Vargasmati, rich in all kinds of wealth, so-called spared up there. His body, when manifested himself, as he shook his body, his very hair fell, turned into blades of evergreen grass, caution, by means of which the sages worship Lord Vishnu after by interfered with the performance of their sacrifice.
Meditative, cautious, worshipful, personality of God that led praise and
Speak into the mic. It's not working.
Emperor Swayambhuvamana enjoyed life with his wife and subjects and fulfilled his desires without being disturbed by unwanted principles contrary to the process of religion. Celestial musicians and their wives sang in choruses about the pure reputation of the emperor, and early in the morning, every day he used to listen to the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead with a loving heart.
Thus, Swayambhuvamanu was a saintly king. Although absorbed in material happiness, he was not dragged to the lowest grade of life, for he always enjoyed his material happiness in a Krishna-conscious atmosphere.
Go ahead, John.
Consequently, although his duration of life gradually came to an end, his long life consisting of a Antara era was not spent in vain, since he ever engaged in hearing, contemplating, writing down, and chanting the pastimes of the Lord.
He passed his time, which lasted 71 cycles of 4 ages, 71 times 4,320,000 years, always thinking of Vasudeva, always engaged in matters regarding Vasudeva. Thus it transcended the 3 destinations.
Therefore, O Vidura, how can persons completely under the shelter of Lord Krishna in devotional service be put into miseries pertaining to the body, the mind, nature, and other men and living creatures?
So this verse here is rather important. In fact, it includes the ones just preceding it, where it talks about how Swayambhuva Manu gave himself continuously to hearing the singers chant the pastimes of the Lord, and how he himself was ever engaged, continuously engaged in hearing, contemplating, writing down, and chanting the pastimes of the Lord. So he was continuously engaged in bhakti, devotional service. And in this verse, Maitreya Muni says to Vidura, how can persons completely under the shelter of Lord Krishna in devotional service be put into miseries pertaining to the body, the mind, nature, and other men and living creatures? Let's do the last 2. Remember that as we go back to text 32. Anyone?
In reply to questions asked by certain sages, he, Swayambhuva Manu, out of compassion for all the living entities, taught the diverse sacred duties of men in general and the different varnas and ashrams.
Somebody?
I have spoken to you of the wonderful character of Swayambhuva, original king. His reputation is worthy of description. He's here as I speak, flourishing of the daughter of
Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 3rd canto, 22nd chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The Marriage of Kardama Muni and Devahuti. Okay, so let's go back to our text 32, and I'm going to ask Advaita Prabhu if he could lead us off in Sanskrit.
Ahishmatim namavidu. Ahishmatim namavidu.
Mahishmatim Namavi,
Ahishmatim namavidu.
Mahishmatim Namavi,
Yam nirvishya samavasa.
Yam Nirvishya Samavasa,
Yam nirvishya samavasa.
Yam Nirvishya Samavasa,
Yam nirvishya samavasa.
Yam Nirvishya Samavasa,
Tasyam pravishto bhavanam.
Tasyam Pravishto Bhavanam,
Tasyam pravishto bhagavam.
Tasyam Pravishto Bhavanam,
Tasyam pravishto bhavanam.
Tasyam Pravishto Bhavanam,
Tapatraya vinashanam.
Tapatraya Vinashana,
Tapatraya vinashanam.
Tapatraya Vinashana,
Tapatraya vinashanam.
Tapatraya Vinashana. Please chant.
Ahishmatnanam Vidyur
Ahishmatim Namami,
Yam Ishya Samavasya
Yam Nirvishya Samavasa,
Tasma Pravishto Bhavanam
Tasyam Pravishto Bhavanam,
Traya Vishavanam
Tapatraya Vinashana. Bahishmatim Namaviv Yam Nirvishya Samavasa Tasyam Pravishto Bhavanam Tapatraya Vinashana
Bahishmatim Namaviv
Bahishmatim Panaviv
Yam Nirvishaya Samavasa
Yam Nirvishya Samavasa
Tasyam Parvisto Bhavanam Tapatraya Vinashana
Tapatraya Vinashana. Okay, let's do the synonyms. Together, please. Bahishmatim, the city Barhishmati. Nama, name. Vibhu, the very powerful Swayambhuvamanu. Yam, which. Nirvishya, having entered. Samavasat, he lived in previously. Tasyam, in that city. Pravishtaha, entered. Bhavanam, the palace. Tapatraya, the threefold miseries. Vinishanam, destroying. And the verse together, please. Having entered the city of Barhishmati, in which he had previously lived, Mani entered his palace, which was filled with an atmosphere that eradicated the three miseries of material existence. So amazing that an atmosphere that we can create can actually remove the material miseries from our lives. And we're going to unpack that together today from this purport. Would someone like to read purport? Go ahead, John.
The material world, or material external life, existential life,
Existential.
existential. The material world, or material existential life, is filled with the threefold miseries. Miseries pertaining to the body and mind, miseries pertaining to the natural disturbances, and miseries inflicted by other living entities. Human society is meant to create a spiritual atmosphere by spreading the spirit of Krishna consciousness. The miseries of material existence cannot affect the status of Krishna consciousness. It is not that the miseries of the material world completely vanish when one takes to Krishna consciousness, but for one who is Krishna consciousness, the miseries of material existence have no effect. We cannot stop the miseries of material atmosphere, but Krishna consciousness is the antiseptic method to protect us from being affected by the miseries of material existence. For a Krishna conscious person, both living in heaven and living in hell are equal. How Swambhuva Manu created an atmosphere wherein he was not affected by material miseries is explained in the following verses.
Tasmai Shri. I'm Sanskritically challenged this morning for some reason. Anyway, all glories to my spiritual master. All glories to Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. I beg your blessings and your mercy today that I might say something beneficial and pleasing to the devotees. So we are pleasure-seeking entities. It is our very nature to seek happiness. And in fact, in our original constitutional nature, we are made up of, part of the substance that we're made up with is bliss, eternal knowledge and bliss. In other words, we are eternally existent in a state of cognition where we know the Lord and experience bliss in relationship with Him. But somewhere along the way, we decided to exercise a little envy, and we said to ourselves, as I did at one point when I first came to Krishna consciousness in that first year, why does he get to enjoy? What about me? And the Lord, being very compassionate, he he is the fulfiller of all our desires, and he knows exactly how to do that. But because we can never be like him, really, it's not our nature to be the supreme. It is our nature to be parts and parcels, to be servants, to be dependent upon him, and to be in relationship to him. He has to create a place that is total illusion, where we can forget him. Because ultimately, we are never separated from the Lord. We only have the illusion or the appearance, the perception of separation. And it is that perception of separation that causes us to forget him. And in that forgetting of him, we become lost in the material world, in the material illusion, in the material concept of life. And we wind up seeking happiness, pleasure, bliss in everything but the Lord. And then what happens is the threefold miseries of material nature ensue. So here we're told by Prabhupada that, first of all, in the verse, Manu was skilled at creating an atmosphere within his palace where the material miseries, the miseries of material existence, were eradicated. And then Prabhupada speaks of the threefold material miseries. Material miseries pertaining to the body and mind, miseries pertaining to natural disturbances, and miseries inflicted by other living entities. So why don't we unpack that a little bit? What are some of the ways in which we can suffer miseries, inconvenience from the body and the mind? Lethargy. Yeah. Bruce?
Any injury that is caused to the body,
Yeah.
or illnesses, sicknesses.
Overthinking. It's okay. Overthinking. Being stuck in the hamster wheel. Being on the loop. Were you going to say something? No? Birth, old age, disease, and death. And then repeated. Birth, old age, disease, and death. What else? How about of the mind? Mental issues, mental illness. Brandon. Traumas. That can be both physical and mental. And a lot of times that goes together, Bruce.
Attachment to things.
Attachment to things. So let's move on to the miseries pertaining to natural disturbances. What does that look like? Mosquitoes. Go ahead, Nate.
Like your child dies.
Your child dies.
Rain during the lunch.
Raining during the Krishna lunch. Except I cleverly escaped that somehow. Jonathan.
You didn't miss that.
Tornadoes,
Tornadoes.
like there was in Tallahassee recently.
Oh, yeah. Increasingly, we have really vicious tornadoes. Inflation, monetary inflation. That's not a natural disturbance. That's man-made. Brandon.
Sleeping on the floors and everything.
Sleeping on the floor whenever we travel. But that also is not a natural disturbance. Natural disturbances are those which happen as a result of weather and heat and cold, etc. Bruce. Floods. Yeah, these are the types of things that are the miseries from material nature. And then how about those inflicted by other living entities? Violence. marriage. That isn't always that way. Marriage can.
Isn't like mosquitoes come more like under this category?
It could be, yeah. That's
Yeah.
that's actually true. So there's some crossover there, I would say, yeah, because the mosquitoes are other living entities, and they're coming to withdraw from our blood bank, from our internal blood bank. Yes, Nishta. Someone hurting your feelings, and this can actually cause suffering in the mind. So there's another crossover. Were you going to say something, Lila Krishna? Snakes and alligators. Yeah, that's right. Politics and war, which we're seeing an abundance of right now. The whole world has gone mad. Jonathan.
COVID-19.
COVID-19. It was man-made. That's coming out now quite solidly.
Activities. Criminal activities.
Criminal activities.
That's broad.
It is very broad. So there are all kinds of miseries in the material world that we experience, and this is designed by the Supreme Lord himself to give us karmic reaction and a level of suffering as a result of our desire to live separately from him. And partially that happens because we can only be happy in relationship to him, but also he builds in naturally the material miseries in material existence so that we don't get comfortable here, because he really wants us back. He actually wants us, he wants our association more than we want his. And yeah, all right.
Wants us back, right?
Mm.
And so why is unique? Because this one are so unbelievably serially enticing. So like my mind goes to two places. One is this like one of the hardest levels, so that like grow more spiritually. But what's happening?
So the enticingness of material nature is designed to actually get us stuck here. But what happens eventually, the living entity, although we don't have an actual cognitive memory of our past lives and the miseries that we've experienced, it is there in our subconscious. And eventually we come to the place where we are materially exhausted. And I couldn't help but think that most of us here have come to that place where we've said, there's got to be something more. This place isn't making me happy. And even though I experience some levels of happiness, as Prabhupada says, that happiness is kind of just the temporary cessation of miseries. So it's designed that way. It's designed with duality. So there's an attraction, but then also there are things that we become averse to. And then eventually we realize that attraction and aversion, the experience of pleasure and pain, the experience of happiness and misery, is itself, those things are itself forms of misery. And we begin to seek, we begin to question. And that's when the Lord guides us and leads us to a place like Krishna House. Can we have a mic over here?
Something in lines that you were said at the end, the counter argument could be that this age is not really very enticing. I would say it's even more frustrating than previous ages, because in previous ages there was some mix with sattva.
Yeah.
So it took you a while to get frustrated because there were still some, even 60 years ago, there was some light. Now it's the more you enjoy it, the deeper frustration. So in that sense, it's actually very mathematically correct for this age.
There's a great sorting that's kind of happening right now, because Lord Chaitanya inaugurated a golden age and things are becoming quite chaotic. And what's happening is we're seeing increasingly many more living entities wanting to come and practice spiritual life. But you're right that in the past ages, there was far more opulence, far more enjoyment. And in actuality, if you were to go to the heavenly planets and the upper planetary systems, they don't have miseries like we have here. There are some things that are suffered. They do experience death and rebirth, but the Vedas actually give materially minded people the methods by which they can leave this place and go to the heavenly planets. But what's interesting is the demigods and those in the heavenly planets actually want to come here. And why is that? Because here has built into it a level of karmic reaction that causes us to experience a level of misery that we actually come to a place where we want something else. We want to go back, basically. Brandon,
Yeah,
microphone, please.
Yeah, I was gonna say that something that I've really noticed a lot of is that in the spiritual community, there's a thing going around saying that basically it's the end of the Kali Yuga and actually the beginning of the Golden Age, like how you were just talking, because of the so much rapid information. And the information's out there now to where before everybody it was hard to get information, so they took it from the source of the news and from the government. But now there's YouTube and there's all these different sources where, social media where people can share whatever they want and they're not getting in trouble for it. So then now everybody's starting to wake up. So more and more people are becoming more spiritually awakened. Whatever path they choose, they're starting to think, man, there's something off about this system that we've been following the past couple years.
Absolutely.
And so now people are starting to wake up to the fact that there's more spiritual, purposes in life rather than this material existence. And so that's the beginning of the golden age. It's just the age of information where we have infinite sources now.
There are so many people online right now seeking information about how to be happy, how to have a spiritual life, how to transcend, how to become self-realized, that the more of us that can learn the skill of being able to present transcendental philosophy online, I think the greater impact that we will have. Yes, Jai, please.
I was thinking about a concept that you brought up about wanting, and the idea of wanting something is the exact definition of misery, which is something that has been created ever since childhood. When we see a commercial or we see a toy, it's like we want it and then we beg for it. And even now, like I'm pretty sure like a lot of us, we're here in Krishna, so we still want money and just things that can add to our pleasures and joys in life. But I noticed that the hugest part of wanting is already having, and already having it is chanting your japas and going to the Supreme and saying, I surrender these wants to you because my wants are your wants, and therefore you already have it. So it's beautiful to be here in a space where you're allowed to fully surrender and to be one of the Supreme.
Very nice. So the Lord Jesus put it this way: seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all of these things shall be added to you. Speaking of all material supply. And he taught that we shouldn't actually seek those things. And in fact, even where he says, give us this day our daily bread, the actual original and the early fathers of the church said what that means is it's a prayer for our daily spiritual sustenance, for daily empowerment. Give us this day our supernal food. And so if we surrender to the Lord will actually take care of supply and needs, and we can surrender to him. And what's interesting too, Jai, is you brought up the idea that in a place like Krishna House, it's a place where we can come and really surrender. And that's kind of what I want to unpack together now, is that Srila Prabhupada has created a house that the whole world can live in. And he's opened up these centers all over the world for the very purpose that those that are desirous of transcending and going back to Godhead can come and can practice spiritual life and create the spiritual atmosphere that eradicates the material miseries. You were going to say something.
That was a very good question that Ari asked, about why is it so enticing?
Mm.
And I was thinking it's enticing because we have built this illusion to think it's enticing, meaning that, like alcohol, for example. One person might think it's amazing, it's a source of enjoyment. Another person would be like, that's disgusting, it's going to just lead to misery. So I'm just thinking how pretty much everything in this world, if we think it's going to bring us enjoyment, that's just the knowledge that we have. Oh, it's going to bring us enjoyment. But if we have the real knowledge, like Madhavendra Puri, I think or Ramanujacharya, he says, when I think of sex life, I spit at the thought, right? Why? Because he has knowledge that it will lead to misery ultimately. But another person may, it's not misery. So I feel like the more we have self-realization, the more knowledge we have from Bhagavatam, the more our consciousness becomes illuminated, and we can actually see for what it is versus, what the illusion is. It's enjoyment.
That's a great transition. So what you're describing, Govinda, is actually the spiritual environment that gets created within and without. And as a result of that spiritual environment, our perceptions become spiritualized and we see things as they truly are. Prabhupada here says that the material miseries, the events don't necessarily change. The things that caused us misery are still there. But what happens is they no longer cause us to suffer, because we've entered into a space where we're on the spiritual or Krishna conscious platform. And from that platform, we can see things as they are. And we understand that these events that unfold that used to cause us misery are external to us, that we're not the body, and that we are the spirit soul, and that the spirit soul remains untouched by all the experiences here. But in order to get to that place, we have to actually create and live in an atmosphere of spirituality. So Prabhupada has given us these centers and instituted the principles of spiritual life within these centers. And we now have 3 generations, maybe going on 4 generations of people that are coming to the temples and centers and practicing. But he also he emphasized there are 9 angas, or 9 limbs of bhakti, 9 different ways that we can practice bhakti. But he emphasized 5. And he said, if you'll practice these 5, then you will be successful in creating a spiritual atmosphere, spiritualizing your existence and spiritualizing the atmosphere around you. So I know that there are some of you that have been in classes and have heard me speak of the 5. Would anybody like to give it a try? The first one. Association. So specifically, and its association in general is really important, but even more so association with those who have acquired advancement in spiritual consciousness, because they have achieved something and can show us, they have seen that spiritual vision and have gone through the process of acquiring it, and they can show us how it's accomplished. Hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, which includes Bhagavad Gita, Chaitanya Charitamrita, all these are Bhagavatam, actually. Chanting. So what are the 2 kinds of chanting that we do? Japa and Kirtan. So we're talking about now the holy names. So when we speak of the hearing process, the The process of bhakti begins with hearing, chanting, and remembering. And without those three, it's really impossible to do any of the others. So when we're talking about hearing, we're talking about primarily sound vibration, not a mental process whereby we learn and come to know information, but by the process of giving rapt attention to the sound vibration, one-pointed attention to the sound vibration of Krishna's names, his pastimes, his characteristics, how he created the world, and so on. What happens is material consciousness is dissolved and our spiritual consciousness is awakened. So hearing sound vibration is the all essential ingredient in all of the other processes of bhakti. So what's another one?
Living in a holy place.
Living in a holy place, which is what's being pointed out here. What's a holy place?
A place where service is rendered.
Yes, a place where all of these things are actually practiced in service to the Supreme Lord, and where we come together and associate with one another and support one another in the pursuit of spiritual life. John?
And more important, is being a holy place is associated.
That's right. The most important part of living in a holy place is associating with those holy people that are living there and hearing from them about how to acquire a spiritualized existence. So the five are, if we can summarize, the five are chanting Hare Krishna, both japa and kirtan, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, Chaitanya Charitamrita, and the other books. And this is, we do study, but primarily the hearing process is meant for taking in the sound vibration, allowing the sound vibration of the verses and purports to waft across our consciousness. And whether we understand what we're reading or not, it's awakening the heart and it's dissolving. So the key is to just give rapt attention, and eventually the things that are written in these books, they awaken from within. Krishna reveals them. Okay, the third is worshiping the form of the Lord. So this can be the deities in the temple. It can be images of the Lord in paint, in pixels on a video screen or a phone screen. Any way that we can contemplate the form of the Lord as it comes to us from the Shastras and it's been passed down by parampara, taking in that visage with rapt attention and imprinting his form upon our mind. This also is dissolving material consciousness and awakening our constitutional spiritual consciousness. And then 4 is living in a holy place where these things are practiced and taking association with the Lord's pure devotees. And if you want to add a 6th, which Prabhupada, he doesn't include them with the 5, but he does include this one in other places, and that is making the message known to others. And there you have a 6-pack. I call it the 6-pack. And if you'll work on your 6-pack every single day, you'll have a strong spiritual core, and you will infallibly make progress. You will infallibly make progress. Prabhupada here states that the miseries of material existence cannot affect the status of Krishna consciousness. So when we practice Krishna consciousness, it acts infallibly upon the heart and consciousness of the living entity. And if we can just, even an atheist can do this and do a science experiment and take in the sound vibration and to follow the standard process as it's given to us by Srila Prabhupada, and they will come to know the Supreme Lord. And they will exit material life and experience eternal life and knowing the Supreme Lord in the bliss of the spiritual world. So, Brandon, please. I want to hear from you guys now. That's essentially what I have this morning. This is how we create a spiritual atmosphere.
I was gonna mention when I was at the Boston Temple, we had the ABCs of Krishna consciousness, which was association, books, chanting, deity worship, and environment.
There it is.
It was based, and in that way, it made it easy for me to memorize it.
Yeah, John. Say it again so everybody can.
Association, books, chanting, deity worship, and environment.
All right, A, B, C, D, E. Very nice. Fun. Well, if you're doing the process correctly, you will have fun regardless. Because what happens is increasingly you become spontaneous and more of your natural self. And you begin to no longer seek from others selfishly, but you learn how to give, and the fun unfolds from that authentic sincerity. Anyone else? It's time. Okay, I'm being given the signal. All right, so let's create a spiritual atmosphere together and enjoy your breakfast. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki. All the assembled devotees ki. Nittai Gaura Premanandi.
Jai.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just when I needed access.
Yeah, it's hearing the bass over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Perfection of life.
Yeah, it hits different.
Thank you, Johnny. Thank you. I don't know, it's the most basic.
That's the Gita. I think that's the Gita. Gita meter.
Yeah, it's the most basic meter that we have. And for some reason, I was just like brain fog.
I should have just told it's a Gita meter.
Crazy. I just tried to practice it this morning for some reason.
If I told you it's a Gita meter,
I probably would have had it. Yeah, easy. Anyway, thank you. Hare Krishna. Let me know if you need me out there at all. I'm getting myself together for putting up Ask a Monk. So
Yeah, well, ask me anything.
Ask me anything. I like that. Ask me anything.
Because that's gonna open a broader spectrum.
That's right. Anything, absolutely anything.
It's a conversation.
Why are we having so much war?
Yeah.
Or, you know,
You just wanna have a conversation started.
yeah, that's right.
So ask me, they already see you are, who you are. They're gonna see, so ask me now.
Ask me anything.
Ask me anything. Yeah, well,
You're welcome.